So Ryan Bundy in the court made an amazing argument that absolutely destroyed the prosecution yesterday down in Nevada as they're prosecuting these political prisoners. And of course, the court will deliberate and then they'll rule in favor of the government, like they always do, most likely. But God will intervene on our behalf in time. But it's not the only place that tyranny is going on. The political prisoners are locked up all over the nation. Standing Rock is ramping up. The police state down there is starting to abuse them. And when Donald Trump should be coming to defend the agreements we made with the Standing Rock in that treaty, he seems to be just ignoring it and saying, well, we need to pump the oil. We need to stand with everyone. Hey, Nathan. So, listen, how do you have unity? How did the Founding Fathers had unity? And let's think about that for a minute. Guys, it didn't come overnight. They had the same problems that we did. Now, it's my belief that people seem to be a little more awake. They seem to be a little less willing then to be slaves, but I wasn't there. What I do know is that it took decades. There was division. There was people that hated each other. There was factions. What we hear about is Lexington Concord and the Revolution, the signing of the Declaration and the Constitution. But there was decades before that of people trying to unify, trying to educate, trying to get the message across, people being abused and others trying to help them, people standing up. But it wasn't like the movements try to make it to be now either. You know, sure, you had people that were milder and you had people that were a little more intense. And the more intense people would call the milder people loyalists, and the milder people might tell the more intense people that they were being too aggressive. But ultimately, they had to come together, and that's what's going to happen. We're going to have to come together with the Mexican and the black and the white. It's not going to be able to be about this faction, about stopping this group or that group, or saying that those people are thugs over there. Guys, the thugs in this nation are very clear. It's the blue line of treason and the politicians giving them their orders. That is who the thugs are. That's who the traitors are. Did you know that the Founding Fathers, have you ever heard of things like the Boston Tea Party, where patriots got together and destroyed private property? But there's a lot more than that. How about the Boston Massacre, where essentially the patriots had a riot, they blocked roads, they threw rocks and sticks and exchanged insults and called for violence? How about the time when the Sons of Liberty burned one of the tax collector's buildings and then tar and feathered him, or when they destroyed a government ship? See, they feed us a narrative of hate and division, guys. And I'm not always saying that our Founding Fathers did everything right. We need to respect the rights of others. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be bold. It doesn't mean that destroying government property is always a bad thing. We just need to remember that unity, that a common desire for liberty or death needs to bring us together, because if we cannot have liberty, we are dead inside as a nation. If we cannot have liberty, we are not America. If you cannot stand up next to the man from the faction down the road, next to the black man, if you can't defend the rights, the human rights of the Muslim while opposing the lawless law of Sharia, if you cannot unite with the man from the Black Lives Matter group and sit down with him and say, let's come together and be principled. If you can't reach out, if you're going to make it about faction and party, you won't ever fix this. That's why our finest patriots are in jail. That's why our property rights are being violated, because we're a house divided against itself. And people will always make excuses. The media will always make excuses. The faction-based pundits will always make excuses. Well, let me say this. If our love of liberty, if our love of justice for all men, not just our friends, if our love of righteousness and unity and hope for our children, if our love of honor and defense of the innocent, the weak, the fatherless, and the widow, if these things don't overcome our faction and our hate and our narratives that allow us to excuse the abuse of our neighbors, the bombing of other nations, and the killing of their families in the name of our false pretense and security. If our love of being patronized by politicians and having our ears tickled by telling us that we're free and that we're safe is more than our love of liberty and justice for all, then America really is dead. We do not have liberty, and the fight is fully lost. But I can say for my part that I care more for liberty than for faction. I care more for justice than for those who call me their friends. And I care more for honor and what God thinks of my actions than for pleasing the faction and the group so that I can be popular and cheered in the halls and at the conventions and at the speeches. And because of that, that's why I stand up and I shame the corrupt tyrant on the side of the road, on the internet, and in our legislative halls. And that's why you do it, because we love our neighbor as ourself, from sea to shining sea, regardless of whether they're the Lakota or the Dakota, or the black or the white or the Mexican, the Christian or the Muslim. Because the lover of liberty, the patriot, defends liberty and justice for all. Guys, have a good night.